Hello everybody, welcome back to the Painted Lady Coaching by Amanda Douglas. I'm Amanda Douglas, and life gave me a PhD in narcissistic abuse, and I'm here to educate the masses on toxic relationship cycles and how to reclaim your identity and move on from it. So today's topic, we are talking about the stages of healing. And I wanted to talk about the stages of healing in reference to after leaving narcissistic relationships or like a toxic relationship. There's a lot of highs and lows that comes with the healing process that I feel like are not talked about enough, and like how it really can just all change on a dime, like from one moment to the next, like how you're feeling about your overall progress, and just it's just a lot of like there's just a lot of emotional back and forth that can like really be like debilitating at times, and even feel like you're not going anywhere when really like you're doing just fine. So with that, let's get into it. And so just to kind of like, preface and give a disclaimer, this is kind of like a general outline of what things can look like, and I'll also give a little bit of like my own personal experience that comes with like leaving a narcissistic romantic relationship. And it can look different for everybody, but this is generally what you might see. So here goes. So like the first phase after leaving a narcissistic relationship, that can kind of look like a couple of different ways, like I said. So there can be like a lot of just like shock and denial with the overall relationship, and then just depending on how you feel about leaving the relationship in the moment, you can probably feel really good about yourself. I know like that's just how I felt initially. I would say like when I first left, I felt like, I would say, exhilarated. Like I felt like I guess like I was, brave, and like that I really just like I did something. And I was very grateful for, taking my life back, essentially. And then I was so glad that I got to see like my friends and my family again. And like I came back home to Florida, so like I was able to like go to Disney again and really just like kind of do things in a way that felt I was ready to live like an authentic life that felt in alignment to me. So that really felt good. But nonetheless, it's like you're kind of left to still sit and process like everything that's happened, per se. And there could be a lot of like confusion and disbelief, and I would say you maybe even still feel kind of like maybe do I want to say numb, like, because I feel like in the initial part of everything, like you haven't really even totally digested like completely what has happened to you and the relationship in its totality. And I guess like that kind of like goes in with denial, right? Because it's like, I think your mind has not yet registered like everything. And that's like the best way I know how to explain that, because and I think that's just part of like your brain trying to protect you. And I think that can kind of happen like when like a similar thing sort of happens like when you maybe experience somebody dying. I know that's kind of like drastic, but like it can kind of be a similar thing. It's just like your mind has not exactly like totally absorbed like what has happened, and then eventually it does, and it can be a lot. So that does kind of bring me to stage 2, which is like kind of like the emotional breakdown, and when like a lot of it starts to like hit you, because you'll feel a lot of like intense sadness, anger, guilt, maybe even blame. And if like if you were maybe prone to like self-gaslighting, you might even start to like just blame yourself and like think that some of this was your fault. Or like if you were like me and you were the one to end things, essentially, you can feel like maybe like you did them wrong, as if they probably were the one doing you dirty the whole time. But this is kind of like the part where like kind of everything comes to the surface. Like all of the feelings, all of the everything just starts to come to the surface and like can really, really be can be very hard to cope with. And then like not only that, but even though like this is like ultimately a good thing, you do kind of grieve the loss of the relationship, as like odd as that sounds. You do. And again, it's not like in a traditional sense when you grieve a relationship ending. It's like you also grieve like whatever image that you had of this person that honestly really didn't even exist, because it was based off of a false identity that was presented in the beginning that, you know, eventually the mask slips over time, and then you just understand that it wasn't real, which is also another devastating thing. And this is like the part of it that can like feel like very just chaotic and exhausting, and also when you're probably the most tempted to like reconcile. I can say for sure that I definitely was, because again, like I just started to feel like I was to blame, and I felt like I maybe had did something wrong. And again, it could be a very difficult time to cope with everything. And like this is when your support system, whether it's like trusted friends and family or like a therapist, like, or your coach, if you decide to get a coach or a therapist, like this is when you'll probably need them the most. And now another part of this journey, because like I don't know if I like to consider it like a separate phase or one that kind of like coincides with like the emotional breakdown of it, like once like the shock and denial wears off, but like emotional, or not emotional, but like withdrawal and isolation. Because I know for me that's kind of like something that I was more inclined to do, like to withdraw and isolate, just because like I was going through like a lot of very like intense emotions, a lot of like screaming and crying myself to sleep type of thing. It was a lot. So I don't know, I felt like more of a need to sort of just be like alone and like away from people, but also like needing a little bit of assurance as well. Like it can be a little oscillating like that. There's also the desire to be less social anyway from that, and also just realizing that you're a little more suspicious of people now in general, unless if it's like people you do trust and have known for some time. It's also quite likely that you may withdraw or isolate if, like, say you are afraid of someone not really understanding, like, what you're going through, or, like, judging you, or, like, if you're one of those people that is maybe has a hard time, like, with being vulnerable, then, like, you also may have, like, a hard time. Because I know I could say that's true of myself. Like, with certain family members, it's like I struggled to be seen, like, in this time, just because, like, I was quite fragile with all of this. So I kind of didn't trust a lot of people to hold that space for me. So that's another reason why isolation sounds very appealing at this time. But this is a time, like, more than ever, like, when, like, you need your support systems. So it's like, yeah, don't be afraid to reach out to the people that you know can support you. And even, like, people like a trusted therapist or coach who is very educated on the matter, for sure. And then another element of this is definitely like anger and even like resentment to a degree. And at least just an overall maybe like desire for justice, possibly. And of course, anger is a completely normal and even justified feeling in all of this when you really break down the level of manipulation and betrayal that has happened. And of course, if maybe you were someone that was discarded, like, especially so. Completely understandable thing. And I know, like, a lot of people, they even have, like, a desire, like, a fantasy of, like, revenge. I can't say that I do relate to that. I think I was just happy to be out and that I made it out. And honestly, just an overall desire that, like, he would get his life together. But that's out of my hands. But again, I was just happy to get out when I did. But if not like a whole desire for revenge, but maybe you could have like sort of like these like obsessive thoughts, at least just about like the relationship and the things that have occurred, because it's just a lot to process. So it's not abnormal at all for that to occur. So then kind of comes the acceptance and the realization of like what it all was. You kind of have a combination of like at least some clarity, and then you get, you know, a little bit of an internal peace, like from understanding. And the acceptance is really good because once you're really able to understand the nature of the relationship and the things that have happened, then you can really stop blaming yourself and then also focus on healing and moving on and creating a better life for yourself. And now, acceptance does not mean that we just excuse everything, but we kind of understand that like the nature of the relationship with a very, you know, mentally, I would say, sick and immature person couldn't necessarily be helped. Now, I'll say there are rare cases where that does happen, but really with this type of dynamic, like there's not a lot you can do here. And unfortunately, you had to witness that and be a part of that. But who they were and how they treated you was in no shape, way, and form your fault. And with this stage in the healing process, it's like you're finally able to see that and really recognize that for what it is. And then coming with this, it's like you do have, you know, hope for the future, and then you're starting to see more of like a positive outlook on things. But there may also be moments still in this phase to where you still get pain, like emotional pain that pops up every now and again from this relationship. Because as you go through life, you may still be seeing and noticing ways that this relationship has affected you. And especially when, and this is like a whole other thing that I'll probably get into in like a different video, but it's like, especially once you start getting into other romantic, you know, relationships, when you start dating again, and then like maybe when you actually like then get into like a more long-term relationship, like you're going to see and notice like how that may come up for you. And I'm just going to say that right now because like a lot of the time I think people have this idea that's like you have to be completely healed before you walk into a new relationship. And while I will argue that you definitely should do as much of that self-reflection and assessing your values and your needs and living in alignment with yourself. Like, that is a must, in my opinion. You must start living a life in alignment with yourself and, you know, get straight on your values, and then get straight on, you know, setting proper boundaries and getting comfortable with setting proper boundaries, and just advocating for yourself and living a life that's authentic to you. You get that squared away, okay? But that does not mean that you're not going to be shown other ways that you can heal once you get into a relationship. Because relationships are our biggest mirrors, and I really do think there's only so much healing that you can get done on your own. Because once you're in that dynamic and you're that, like, intimate with another person, they're gonna mirror stuff back to you and where some other work needs to be done. And that's okay. That's very much okay. Because I think to have this expectation that you have to be completely healed, like, that's nonsense. Relationships will be your biggest mirrors, and they will show you areas of opportunity and ways that work still needs to be done. And that's totally okay. But I will say that your biggest thing needs to be understanding your needs and your values and your boundaries and standing on your shit. Okay? Okay. And with that said, that's going to be very crucial for, like, building your self-worth, and then also, like, discovering your identity again. Because I will say that was something that I realized after all of that, is, like, it did take a toll on how I viewed myself, and the fact that, like, I had been so disconnected and cut off and amputated from myself and my identity. And to the point where I was like, I don't even know exactly, like, what I'm doing here or who I am, and, like, what the point is. Like, it was quite rough. Because it's like, before that, it's like I was working at Sephora, and I definitely wanted to be, like, a makeup artist and do things involved with makeup, and that felt very aligned with my purpose, because I was quite known for, like, my knowledge based at the store. It's like I was, like, a skincare and makeup specialist, as well as, like, a makeup artist. And I had a lot of very happy and returning clients, because it's like they could guarantee that Amanda is going to find what I need, but she's also not going to sell me the latest and the trendiest thing that this influencer on Instagram is talking about if it's not right for me. And the thing is, I could very easily assess, like, what someone is looking for and what they want, and kind of also assess where they're at, and then kind of bridge the gap to find the perfect product for them. And again, and I could tell them exactly why something is going to work better for them than this other thing. And trust me, I loved it. I loved it so much. And that's where I kind of learned that, like, helping people and uncovering their needs and all of that shit, like, it felt like that feels, like, purposeful, and, like, really makes me happy to be able to do that for people. And then people walking away, like, confident is what I love. And just arming people with knowledge. So that led me to becoming a coach and a content creator that's based off of, like, giving people knowledge to help themselves and to have them feel more confident and authentic. So I just got very disconnected from all of that, though, like, after my relationship had ended. And at the time, though, I was working for Starbucks, because I did leave that job at Sephora, like, not long after I got into that relationship. And I had a handful of jobs since then, and then when I left this person, I was working for Starbucks. And then I did that for quite some time, and then I was just like, okay, we need to figure out something that's a lot more soul aligned. And I was able to really get to the bottom of that, thankfully. And it's very possible for anybody. And I'm definitely here to tell you that there's life after all of that. And then I met my husband, and honestly, it's been the most beautiful and fulfilling relationship that I've ever had. So it's all possible for you to have a healthy and beautiful life after all of it. And then, so this kind of brings me to want to talk about like forgiveness, right? And I feel like forgiveness is a very, very, very loaded topic, like when it comes to, especially when it comes to abuse and things like that. And I think no matter what your feelings are on forgiveness, like, is valid. Because I think you don't necessarily have to, like, forgive. If anything, acceptance is going to be the biggest thing. Like, accepting that they are who they are and that you didn't deserve any of that. And there was nothing better that you could have done, and that's it, and that's okay. And the only thing that you can really do at this point is take responsibility for yourself and your life. And if you're here, I'm assuming that is what you're doing, so you are doing more than enough, and that's okay. But I think acceptance will be the biggest thing for you, regardless of what your feelings are on forgiveness. Because once you come to that acceptance, you can let it go. And that's a beautiful thing. Okay, so then at this point with all of it, this is kind of at the point where you really start to, you gain confidence and you gain stability in your life, and you're maybe even likely to just start being more social and even start dating and being open to that, or not, and that's totally fine. But you start, living a more authentic life and gain more control over your life, and you feel more empowered, and like I said, just living a life that's more in alignment with you. And I would even say that, like I said, the boundaries and even self-care and self-love, that's going to be some very vital things at this point in your life. And in this part of it, that's like staying consistent with all of it. And I also want to emphasize again that the healing process of all of this really is an emotional roller coaster. Like, you will have ups and downs, highs and lows, days where you feel like you are like on top of the fucking world, and then like just days where it's just like you're drowning in it. And that's all okay. That is all part of it. And I cannot stress how important it really is to just feel all of it. Just sit with it all and get curious about it, and don't judge yourself about it. You might feel like you're having setbacks, and it's all just a part of it. And you may have emotional flashbacks and like moments of doubt, and like all of that is going to be very difficult, but it's also very important, and to sit with it, to understand it, so that you can get through it. And like I said, like having those support systems and really getting in connection with yourself is going to be of utmost importance. So again, things like journaling as well, and therapy, coaching, like grounding techniques and mindfulness practices. Like, I cannot stress like how important those things were for me in my journey. And I promise that they will be life-changing for you too. Patience and self-compassion with yourself are also very, very, very important. You went through a super wild and unimaginable thing, okay? And you pulled yourself up out of it. So that's one thing to also acknowledge with that. And it's a lot to process. So it's okay if it's a little bit messy, especially at first. It's okay to let it all happen and not judge yourself. So again, I say healing is possible even when it's a long road and even seems kind of like wild and unpredictable, I promise you can do it, and I am living proof for that. I would love for you to stick around and even subscribe, because I will making a lot more of this content. And even if you want to book a one-on-one session with me, or in a free consultation, or if you'd like to book a one-on-one session or a free consultation, you can check out my website for that, and I'll put the link in the description. I basically talk about everything from healing and narcissistic abuse recovery and cultivating healthy relationships. I also have other resources and even like freebies that can kind of help you just get in touch with yourself and get to know yourself a little bit more. So also look for that in the comment section. And till then, I'm glad you're here, and I'll see you next time. Bye.